Hello, my name is Mike Sanderson, and today I'm going to tell you about the Treaty of Versailles and how it was the catalyst to World War II. Imagine your country lost a war and was forced to accept blame for millions of deaths, surrender land, cripple its military, and pay enormous amounts of reparations for decades. Most of us have probably experienced being blamed or punished for something that we felt was unfair, but imagine that happening to an entire nation. I've always been interested in history, especially the events that helped shape the modern world. The Treaty of Versailles is one of the most important examples of how decisions made after a war can affect future generations. History remembers the Treaty of Versailles as the document that ended World War I, but I believe it should also be remembered as one of history's greatest political mistakes. A treaty helped to create peace, instead helped lay the foundation for another world war just 20 years later. The question isn't whether Germany deserved consequences for its actions. The question is whether those consequences ultimately made the world safer. Today I will explain why the Treaty of Versailles failed to create lasting peace, why its harsh treatment of Germany contributed to one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. The Treaty of Versailles was the peace agreement that officially ended World War I. It was signed on June 28, 1919, exactly 5 years after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the event that sparked the war. The treaty was negotiated by the victorious Allied powers. Those were primarily France, Great Britain, and the United States. Their goal was to ensure that a conflict as devastating as World War I would never happen again. However, in attempting to secure peace, the treaty imposed harsh terms on Germany that would have significant political and economic consequences. While the treaty was created with good intentions, many historians argue that it focused more on punishing Germany than creating long-term stability in Europe. This raises an important question. Did the treaty truly achieve its goal of lasting peace? So was Germany the only country to blame? Before discussing the Treaty of Versailles, it's important to understand that World War I was not caused by Germany alone. Europe was divided into two major alliance systems, as you can see on the map there. Germany was allied with Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, while France, Great Britain, and Russia formed the Allied powers. And then the United States later joined, but this is the European alliance. The war began when Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist in 1914. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, but because of the alliance system, other nations were quickly pulled into the conflict. Russia mobilized to support Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia and France, and Great Britain entered the war after Germany invaded Belgium. What started as a regional dispute in the Balkans rapidly became a global conflict because of these military alliances. This is why many historians argue that assigning sole responsibility for World War I to Germany oversimplifies the most complicated conflict in modern history. While Germany certainly bears responsibility for its actions during the war, this map demonstrates that World War I was the result of the decisions made by multiple nations, not a war on Germany that started entirely on its own. So what did Germany lose? As you can see on the map, the purple territories are the territories that Germany was forced to give up after the treaty. Under the Treaty of Versailles, Germany suffered significant losses that went far beyond simply losing a war. Germany was forced to give up approximately 13% of its territory and all of its overseas colonies. Millions of German citizens suddenly found themselves living outside Germany's borders. The treaty also severely limited Germany's military. The German army was reduced to just 100,000 soldiers, conscription was banned, and Germany was prohibited from possessing tanks, military aircraft, and submarines. The Allies would believe these restrictions would prevent Germany from ever starting another major war. Finally, Germany was required to pay massive reparations for the damages caused by World War I. These payments placed enormous financial pressure on an already struggling nation. For Germans, these terms were not a peace agreement, rather a punishment. The combination of territorial loss, military restrictions, and economic burdens created the resentment that would have long-lasting consequences. So the cost of defeat. The Treaty of Versailles placed enormous economic burdens on Germany. In addition to the debt Germany had already accumulated during World War I, the treaty required Germany to pay massive reparations to the Allied powers. These payments strained the German economy and made it difficult for the government to recover financially. To make matters worse, Germany struggled to meet its financial obligations and began printing more money in an attempt to repay its debts. As a result, the value of the German mark rapidly declined. The economic damage caused by the war, combined with harsh financial terms of the treaty, left Germany in an extremely vulnerable position during the early 1920s. Hyperinflation. Hyperinflation was one of the most extreme economic crises in modern history. By November of 1923, $1 US was worth approximately 4.2 trillion German marks. Prices rose so quickly that workers were often paid multiple times a day so they could immediately spend their money before it lost even more value. The value of the German mark was losing by the hour. Ordinary Germans suffered tremendously during this period. People carried wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy basic necessities like bread and milk. Families who had spent decades saving money saw their life savings become completely worthless in an hour. In some cases, paper currency became so worthless that people burned it in their fireplaces because it was cheaper than actually buying firewood. It's difficult to overstate how devastating this was for the German people. Hyperinflation didn't just destroy Germany's economy, it destroyed public confidence in both the government and the country's future. So the political consequences. The Treaty of Versailles didn't just hurt Germany economically, it also had serious political consequences. Many Germans viewed the treaty as humiliating because they believed they were being unfairly blamed for World War I and was punished far beyond what was reasonable. As economic conditions worsened, public trust in the Weimar Republic began to decline. Many citizens blamed their own government for accepting the treaty's terms and failing to improve living conditions. Political violence became more common, and extremist political groups on both the left and the right began gaining support by promoting radical change. A combination of national humiliation, economic hardship, and political instability created an environment where many Germans became desperate for strong leadership and quick solutions. These political consequences would ultimately play a major role in shaping Germany's future during the 1920s and 1930s. So the rise of extremism. So Germany demanded change. Extremist political movements started to gain support, and then came the rise of Adolf Hitler. Hitler didn't create the anger that many Germans felt after World War I, but he capitalized on it. The Treaty of Versailles was not the sole cause of his rise to power, but it created conditions that made his promise attractive to millions of Germans. So did it work? When looking at the results of the Treaty of Versailles, the biggest question is whether it actually achieved its purpose. The goal is to prevent another major war by weakening Germany and creating stability in Europe. However, the treaty failed because it created more problems than it solved. Although Germany was temporarily weakened, the harsh punishments created anger, economic struggles, and political instability. Instead of encouraging peace, the treaty caused many Germans to feel humiliated and betrayed. This resentment allowed the extremist leaders to gain support by promising to restore Germany's pride and undo the treaty. The Treaty of Versailles directly caused World War II by playing a major role in creating the conditions that made another war possible. A peace agreement that creates decades of anger and instability cannot be considered a successful peace. So some counter-arguments. Germany deserved punishment. The Great Depression also contributed to Germany's problems, and the Allies wanted to prevent another war. These are all fair points to consider. Germany did deserve consequences for its role in World War I. That is absolutely true. And the Allies had legitimate reasons for wanting to prevent another devastating conflict. The Great Depression also played a major role in making Germany's problems worse. However, the Treaty of Versailles was still the most important factor because it created the foundation for many of these problems. The economic penalties, loss of territory, and restrictions placed on Germany created anger and resentment before the Great Depression even began. The treaty weakened trust in the German government and gave extremist leaders an opportunity to gain support. The Great Depression intensified Germany's struggles, but the resentment created by the Treaty of Versailles was already there. Without the anger and the instability caused by the treaty, extremist movements would have had a much harder time gaining popularity. So in conclusion, the Treaty of Versailles shows that punishments alone does not always create stability. While Germany did deserve consequences for its actions in World War I, the treaty went beyond punishment and created economic hardship, political instability, and widespread resentment. These conditions did not immediately cause World War II, but they created an environment where extremist leaders could gain support and push Europe towards another devastating conflict. In the end, the Treaty of Versailles failed because it focused more on punishing Germany than building a lasting peace. A successful peace agreement should prevent future wars and not create the conditions to make another war possible. And these are my sources.
Very good. Very informative.